as Wilco makes a run ahead of it. Bergkamp suddenly changed pace through the centre. It's Bergkamp! That's magnificent! The move, and then this, which left Davies Ass totally stranded.
Hello and welcome to Bergkamp Wonderland. We are an Arsenal podcast and we're back once again. Don't say it. I know you're all thinking it. Don't say it. That song is old and it's an old reference, but new season 23-24 is underway. Game is done and ABW are making changes. So yes, before I go into those changes, let me introduce my guests. At the top of the picture is Brighton's #1 fan and all-round good guy. It's Josh Daw. How you doing, Josh?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of weird, the season being back. I don't feel like I'm fit. I didn't do a pre-season, so I'm coming in cold, and hopefully my knees will stay intact for the entire show.
You look pretty good from here, mate. Very fit. I have to hold the ladies back. No, I get what you mean. It takes a little while, doesn't it, to get your head around what's going on. And speaking of getting your head around what's going on, rumour has it he's just left the stadium to be here now, because that's how long it took to get his tickets to work. Most of you will know Femi doesn't pay for tickets. Tickets pay for Femi. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, all good. Someone in the chat just threw me off with everything there just now, and I'm just trying to recover.
it's all happening.
Avon. Yep, there you go. There's the one. Avon just ruined my whole flow there. I had to go on.
Yeah.
I was wondering what is he talking about there?
It's a nice way for Gabriel to get a new contract, isn't it? Just get your agent to go, hey.
Just signed a new contract.
Yeah. I have to say I haven't even heard of this one, so we'll go into that shortly. Right. So before we get underway, first of all, good evening to you all in the chat. I see you. Brady's Banana, Hambo Gumbo, that's a great name. Sai, Paul Neil, Avon, Deadstone, Jim, Billy, Avon, I've already mentioned. Who else we got here? Loki, Steph, how you doing? Hello, good evening to all of you, Clock Orange as well. So thanks for joining us. Some bloke called Danny. He sounds like a pillock. Anyway, as you will probably see, we first and foremost, we are streaming this on Facebook. Apparently that still exists. I didn't realize. I thought it was just for like mums and nans, but apparently Facebook is still a thing. So we're trialing that instead of Twitch. The second thing to mention is this season, at least for the time being, we are going to experiment with Monday podcasts. So every Monday we will be recording at roughly this time, give or take our work schedules, because we figured it's quite a long time to wait for us to review a weekend game on a Thursday. So we are going to be coming to you on a Monday, and during Champions League weeks, we will be doing 2 shows for you, you lucky devils. So we'll be recording on a Monday and a Thursday in European weeks, and just a Monday during the normal games, so Premier League, etc. We probably won't do extra shows for Carabao Cup games. I'm not going to lie. Sorry about that. Obviously, if there's any dramatic major news or transfer windows, etc., we will do some usual extra shows. And of course, we'll do some interviews and specials here and there as well. Look out for one of those coming up at the end of the month. And the other thing that's changing, yes, Josh.
Before the chat box mentions it, what are we going to do next week?
Next
because we play on Monday.
Play on a Monday, right? Yes, good point. When we play on a Monday, we will move the podcast on a day. So we will almost certainly be recording Tuesday next week, because none of us want to be recording a podcast at 11 o'clock at night. So yeah, next week, or on the case of a Monday game, we will record on a Tuesday. So there we go. Best laid plans ruined.
I've been holding on to that one for at least 48 hours since you announced it.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. Piss poor planning on my behalf. The other quick thing to mention as well is that our shows are going to be a little bit shorter. I know you love listening to people like myself waffle on forever. However, there will be less carpentering this season. Our shows will be between 1 hour, 1 hour and 15, at a maximum 1 hour 30, but most will be between an hour and 1 hour and 15. So just trying to change it up a bit, make it a little bit more punchy. and knock off some of the big guns numbers. So there we go. Right. Enough waffle. Let's get into it. Josh, I'm going to start with you. Victory on the opening day of the season. We won by 2-1 against Nottingham Forest. Quite a few things that we could pick up on. I don't really want to go through the whole starting lineup, but I do just want to pull out something that is apparently going to be quite relevant, and that is the absence of Gabriel. And we saw Thomas Partey kind of come into the right back / inverted midfield role. Little bit of a switch up. We also saw Eddie and Nketiah come back in. Were you surprised? And based on this seemingly breaking news about Gabriel, which I must admit I know nothing about, so people might want to fill me in here, but I just assumed he was carrying an injury. Does this change your opinion slightly on that? And what was your thoughts on Eddie coming in after apparently training very well in the week?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things on there. I'm just trying to scroll back to have a look. Yeah, it's John Cross from the Mirror. I think we all know him in terms of breaking the story that Arsenal defender Gabriel is the latest big name star to be targeted for a big money move to Saudi Arabia. Now, who knows? John Cross has been currently, I think, announcing and breaking all the Chelsea signings. So I'm not sure how close he is to Arsenal anymore. But there we go. But from what Arteta said, it was tactical. That was the sounds of things anyway. And I guess when you looked at that Forest side, did we need the physicality of Gabriel at that point? Or did he want to bring in more players that were good for build-up? So Ben White and Timber, either side of Saliba, who we know and have seen, in the charity Community Shield, was basically at one point just playing as a lone defender whilst we had 9 attackers on the field chasing the game. So we know that Saliba can do that job of just anchoring in the middle. And then it was interesting that we brought in a lot of players just to basically control Forest, more or less, and move up with some, probably you'd say 4 progressive 6s. In the case of White, Timber, you've then got Rice and Partey just across that 4 with Saliba sweeping behind. And I think for the most part, we controlled them quite well. We were obviously caught out in the counter with a hold, but Eddie also looked to show what he can do. We know he is a hell of a streaky player. And I think for me, my frustrations with Eddie is you can see the player that's there, but it doesn't necessarily progress at the rate you'd want when you see the likes of Saka getting demonstrably better so quickly. The same with Martinelli, same with all of our other youngsters. The progression that Eddie makes year on year or season on season isn't quick enough for us, it feels anyway, as a fan base. But when Arteta says that when he was in training all week, that he was basically saying, you're an idiot if you don't play me, well, we can't argue with that kind of statement because we weren't there to see what he was doing in training. And clearly he sees another opportunity to cement himself because he now knows that there's pressure on him. But we've got Balogun's waiting in the wings now, coming back from fitness. So when we had that issue last season where Jesus was, not fit for 3 months and Eddie came in, then he had that barren spell where we were lucky that we got to January and brought in Trossard, and, the impact that he had playing in centre forward. We know there's a lot of depth now for that position. So everybody's going to be top of their game. Otherwise, within an instant, they're getting replaced.
Do you think as well, just sticking with you for a second, this whole tactical element, the Gabriel thing, I guess the argument that I've seen a few people say this, and I think I tend to agree. If you are going to play an opposition who literally come with absolutely zero intent to attack until the last 10 minutes, which is exactly what Forest were. I mean, they were basically fodder on the day, and we still contrived to sort of let them back in. But was that for you justification? Like you're comfortable with us doing these sort of changing things up against these sort of oppositions, because we can't really afford to do that against any team that's sort of 12th upwards, can we?
No, but I think it's also one of those that you could see that it depends on the team. I know we say 12th upwards, but there's still different styles we'll see within that. Maybe it's one against Newcastle we look at because we know how much they just want to sit back absorb and try and hit us on the break. So you want that strong bank of almost 4 defenders with someone who then covers and sweeps in behind. But those defenders being strong enough or technical enough, they're able to play those passes. What'll be interesting now that unfortunately it looks like Timber has received a significant injury, what happens there in terms of who comes in. You see Zinchenko being a natural option. You could see Kivior being an option there as well. It's just interesting about what we'll do with this and having this squad that's adaptable and could switch up tactics as well. Because I think you've seen that Pep did it in the Burnley game. You know, he completely switched from the system he was using before. Everyone would have assumed, oh, he's going to go really narrow again, like they did to basically take the treble towards the end of the season, and went, oh no, wingers now, wing play, that's back. So definitely, we've got an adaptable squad and we can adapt to our opposition if needed.
Yeah, for sure. Fem, we'll touch on the stuff before the game in a bit on a separate subject with regard to the tickets, etc. But talk to me about your sort of match day experience on the day. Seemed to me like the atmosphere was pretty good. Seemed to me like the crowd was a little bit edgy, and I thought performance on the pitch kind of was a little bit static, wasn't it, for sort of like 10 to 15 minutes. They missed that really big chance, which they absolutely should have buried, really. I think a sort of fit and firing Johnson, wasn't it, probably takes that on another day. We got away with that. Once we scored the first goal, it sort of seemed to settle everything and the ground seemed to relax. But what did you make of the overall performance, seeing it in the flesh?
Yeah, I thought I think you described it well. It could have been a Southampton type start, couldn't it? If that goal had gone in. I mean, it was from our own mistake, really. A header, I think, from Saliba. It was, I think. So yeah, we did start quite not nervy, I wouldn't say, but we just controlled the game, is what I would say. Controlled the ball, and I think it's so hard. The league. I mean, when teams, if a lower league team comes and does a low block, we usually think, low block. It's quite hard to break down just 9-10 men behind the ball, really. When you're talking about Premier League teams who are, still quite fit, they're still quite tall and agile, and they have no intention whatsoever of getting past the halfway line. They didn't even play a striker. They played, 2 attacking midfielders peeling off as strikers. If they even went past the halfway line, then it's going to be a game of patience. And I think I said, when I watched us against Man United this pre-season and I saw the way they set up against us, I pretty much said, this is how every team is going to play against us. Even when we played Barcelona, if you actually watch that game, all they did was counter-attack us. That's how they sat back. And so we got to get used to this now, unfortunately. We've been targeted as a team that dominates possession. And it's what happened to Man City at a point where, if you notice, they used to let in goals just straight from long balls or one ball attacks. And that's the stage that we're in now. We're getting pinged by one ball. But saying that, we didn't really give up a lot. Saliba I thought was just brilliant at the back in the early stages of the game, just controlled the whole pitch. Ben White was pretty much playing right back, to be honest, even attacking right back at some points. So it was a nervy start, but we kind of, the early goals settled us, I would say. Always scoring in the first half in those situations, it totally changes the complexion of the game. Totally, always.
Yeah, agreed. And sticking with you as well, talk to me about Eddie. What's the opinion like in the ground? Because I sort of feel like Eddie gets a bit of a tough. The problem is like I'm as guilty as anyone, because I'm not convinced that Eddie is. It's not that he's not good enough. I just don't think he doesn't quite suit what we want to do. But when he starts, he seems to score goals. And although the goal is deflected, it's brilliant from Martinelli to create the space. He gets a little bit of fortune in the way that the ball breaks to Eddie, but he's in exactly the position you want your centre forward. He takes the shot early. It's composed. It's a good finish past the returning Matt Turner, and he deserved that little bit of luck with the deflection. He consistently scored goals. Obviously, the crowd warmed to him when he scores. I mean, of course, they're going to cheer a goal. But in the ground, do you still get that, I don't know, that undercurrent of he's just not quite us? Like in the, I don't know what it is. There's just something that he's just not quite what we want. Do you know what I mean? What's it like in the
No,
ground
no.
around him?
It's. I mean, like, the reason why I laugh is because there's a particular person that sits 2 seats away from me, and he absolutely hates him. Even if he scores, whatever he does, it's like, get him off, get him off. Look at that, was rubbish. Get him off. That's
Unfortunately,
all I
Karl
ever.
still gets to go to games. Unfortunately,
But yeah, you know what? Eddie's a funny one because he's a throwback striker, isn't he? He's more of a like a Ian Wright like type striker where in the
Kevin
heyday
Campbell.
of like if you were playing a 2 up front, he would be absolutely deadly, lethal. If he was playing for a Palace, I could see him scoring goals. A Brighton, even swapping for Welbeck, for example, I think he would do well. Josh is smiling, but I like Eddie. But the only thing is, I'll just have to. I'll just look at it the same consistency that people have with, let's say, an Aubameyang when I was at Arsenal. People had a problem with his overall game, but they loved it that he was scoring. It, obviously at a different rate than Eddie, but people always had a problem with Aubameyang's overall play. Now, Eddie's overall play is a little bit better than Aubameyang's, I would say, but I don't know if he gets involved enough. And so the drop off that we saw at the end of last season, for example, when Eddie was playing for Martinelli's performance, for example, where the combination of passes, people used to say they have 1-2 passes to each other per game, for example. Those types of things don't really help the connection with the team. But he scores goals, he's always there. His overall game has improved a lot. But for me, there was a stat going around today that in the first 15 minutes of the second half, he touched the ball once.
Touchable once, yeah. I saw that,
yeah. It's not his fault necessarily because we did change for some reason we changed our whole system at the beginning of the second half where Hazard basically was playing sort of central attacking midfield and Rice was playing at left 8 for some reason, and then so the ball seems to be attracted to I said Hazard, didn't I? I mean Havertz. But the ball seems to be attracted. Yeah, the ball seemed to be attracted to Havertz in that second half, so maybe that's why Eddie didn't get as much of the ball. Now, I think the finish was good. He's a finisher. I always say if you give him a chance, he finishes. That 6-yard, 8-yard ball. That's his bread and butter. That's what he does. But his overall game has improved. But I think for bigger games, I just think we have better options. I would prefer to see Trossard in some of the I'll worry about going away to Palace, for example. How involved is he going to be? We need our centre forward to be very, very involved in that game for things to, even if they don't stick to them, to bounce off them, for other players to be connected to them. And that's the only thing I worry about with Eddie sometimes.
Yeah, I personally feel like Trossard probably does play that Palace game. And like I said, starting Eddie in this game was a reward for his work in training. Josh, let's talk about the new boys then. Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, and Jurrien Timber. Probably we'll deal with the latter last because that will segue us into that injury. But as for Rice and Havertz, for me, Rice was steady without being spectacular. Did a decent job. I think we saw some flashes of what he's going to be good at in terms of the passing, breaking up play. And I actually thought Havertz was low-key pretty decent. I know that opinion on him is going to be divided because of the Chelsea element, because he's got this Ozil-type persona. He has got that very languid style. But I thought in particular when he moved into that central striking role, strangely, I thought he really held the ball up pretty well and created what could have been a couple of clinching chances at the end. And then obviously Timber, going off with that injury, was very composed, very, very good in that first half. Is it pretty much a thumbs up for those 3 new starters on the opening day for you?
Yeah, I think there's one caveat that I've got on Rice, and I think I'm not the only one at ABW that wasn't necessarily convinced by Declan Rice. I didn't want to name him, just in case he doesn't come on. But yeah.
Lift up bus, throw under Welsh. That's how it works.
Okay, that's fine. But yeah, he's one of those that I don't always necessarily see the hype. And he looked like he was excited to play for Arsenal. Let's put it that way. There was a lot of things I think he was trying because he was in the buzz of, I'm playing for a big club now. I'm loving this. You could see how pumped he was from the moment he was singing North London Forever. Before the game kicked off, that he's really into being here. And I think what will come is when he calms down, we'll start to see, or I'll start to see, the player that is the £105 million player that we bought from West Ham. Because I think there's still, trying to force some things. But I think once he gets comfortable, we'll start to see that real player come out from there. And I think the same from Havertz as well, but in the opposite. And as you say, he's not as emotional. I guess I'd probably say similarly to a player you knew very well in terms of Saliba. Saliba kind of came in last season as a bit of a, I don't know how you describe him, maybe a bit of a wallflower. Very...
Legend.
Yeah, maybe.
He was quiet until he felt comfortable.
Exactly. Once he put one in the top corner against Brentford, he was fine at that point. And I think Havertz is exactly the same. Gets that goal in the league or in the Champions League, and we'll start to see his personality grow. He gets comfortable. And I think what probably doesn't help is the fact that, as you say, Jesus isn't there. So I think naturally he probably feels like a little bit of that weight on his shoulders where he said, we're not bringing you in for you to be another striker. We want you to get all our goals like it was at Chelsea. But then when your main striker drops out with an injury for, who knows, maybe 3 months again, it's like, oh, great. So I think, is it the reaction he had to the Saka goal? Havertz. I think that's it. I think slowly, the more games he plays in this side, the more he realizes he won't be relied on as heavily, and he can kind of relax, get into the game, does his things, and obviously he's been snatching at chances. But I think we've seen that from all of our forwards. They went through that season, not last season, the season before, where our front four basically spent their entire time snatching at chances because they didn't know when the next one was coming. And Havertz has been doing that at Chelsea for 2 or 3 seasons. I think once he gets over that and realizes it's fine, I can miss it. I can miss that chance. There's going to be another one because I've got some wonderfully creative players playing behind me, or I can help one of my mates out and play a pass into them. It doesn't matter if they'll miss it because chances are they'll create the situation again where I've got another go at that through ball.
Yeah.
And then, finally on to Timber. He's looked to be the one that's hit the ground running in the sense of looked absolutely superb. Was the player that I think we wanted, almost a clone of Ben White in terms of shithousery, but can play on that opposite flank as well. And I think it will be a blow. I don't know how long he's out for at the moment. I think from what they've said, it's just a knee injury, but they've not mentioned ACL, and there's many more ligaments in that knee. And I wonder if we go on to, there's a question, I think we'd have to roll it back to find it, about whether or not he should have come back on.
Yeah, well, that's something I'm going to ask them actually.
I think.
What was the thought in the ground at the time, Fem? Because I watching the replay from home, I thought he just pulled his calf because that's where his hand moved to. But I mean, I know our doctor's off to Man United, but if we got someone else who just doesn't do their job,
we have that lady doctor, don't we now?
Yeah, but
that's who was in all the introduction videos.
Yeah,
and doing their medicals. It was a lady.
That's the ambulance coming to get Timber now as we speak. But yeah, I mean, in the ground, I mean, you probably speak to people at halftime and stuff. Like, were you surprised to see him come back out? Because, I sort of work on that premise that if a player's carrying a knock right before the end of the first half, if they're not, I know you've got to rely on the players, like, judgment a little bit, but it just felt like a game we didn't need to risk him. We were cruising at that point, and it just seemed like an unnecessary risk. Was that how it came across there?
Yeah, I mean, he looked in a lot of pain. To be fair, that was an impact injury, which he got a yellow card for, and it looks like he's injured the other knee.
Yeah, true.
And Josh, it is ACL, because a few of the Dutch journalists have basically said so, that they've spoken to his family, basically, and they're saying it's ACL. But obviously, there's different types of ACL injuries, isn't there? There's the Robert Perez ACL injury. There's some worse ones. The Tyrone Mings one on Saturday looked quite bad because he couldn't get off the pitch himself.
Courtois, Militao.
And I know, exactly. Yeah, that's why I've been saying that to you, Josh. The ACL seems to be the new.
It was the big
thing.
Emery
I didn't expect us to get one. It's a bit it's a really, really, like, I've felt really upset since I heard this injury news. It's really thrown our plans out of the window, to be honest.
It's 6 months minimum, isn't it? Realistically, if you're lucky, it could be a full season. Does it change your thoughts then around the Kieran Tierney news that we got this morning? Apparently Newcastle are keen on him or Cucurella, potentially even on a loan deal. Do you think this changes Arteta's thinking? Because like Josh said at the start, we have got Kivior. For me, Kivior is a centre-back. He's built like a centre-back. He plays like a centre-back. Every time I've seen him at left-back, I'm just not convinced. Tomiyasu, I think, can do a job. But again, for me, he's a centre-back who can play right-back. I'm not saying Kieran Tierney is the best inverted full-back. But Zinchenko just can't seem to get fit. And I don't want to be that guy. And I appreciate it was for a good cause, but I cannot understand how he's able to play in a charity game and not be available, at least on the bench, for our opener. That, to me, seems very strange. But if he can't keep fit, my argument would be, well, you just keep Kieran Tierney and you switch the inverted side to the right side and you go down that right side rather than relying on the left side inversion. Would you be in favour of keeping Kieran Tierney now?
No.
I'll be gone.
You know what it is? We should definitely never entertain loaning him to Newcastle.
No, I agree.
Selling him to Newcastle is problematic enough. Loaning him to Newcastle, I mean, by all reports from some people who do have sources in the club, if you read their Twitter accounts, we do actually need to sell players.
Yeah.
It doesn't take rocket science to work it out, especially when we're going to Brighton and Brentford and literally changing the deal to a loan deal. It should have. I mean, a lot of people are celebrating, saying, "Oh, master stroke. That means we can sign more players." I saw it as that probably means we do actually need to sell players.
The only way of doing it.
You can't keep signing players every summer without selling anyone. At some point, it will catch up to you, and it looks like. And I think if you look at the players, you look at the players that you can sell, Tierney is clearly one of them. Another season, basically, he won't be a starter. Let's be honest. He's just there as a backup again.
Didn't he make the squad?
It makes his value go down even more. My preference would be, if you're going to sell players, sell them. If you've made a decision, Arteta clearly doesn't fancy Tierney as much as we think. Oh, he's a serviceable left back. We like him. He's just not in the manager's plans. Let's be honest, because when Zinchenko was injured back end of last season, it wasn't Tierney getting picked anyway. It was Kivior getting picked. So there's literally no point. You have to pray that Tomiyasu just gets back to form, because he's now a very key player for us all of a sudden. I would say sell Tierney, sell Holding, and we got to sign one more defender.
Yeah,
that's somehow, whether it's on loan. Maybe we want to go for Cucurella on loan, even though I don't really rate him that much. But
I would sell Tierney to Newcastle in a heartbeat if it stops him getting Cucurella on loan. Put it that way.
You still got visions of Cucurella that
he haunts his nightmares.
Don't see. Yeah.
I saw him being one of the best left backs in world football for about 4 months until Graham Potter decided that left centre back was a better position for him. Because he just overthought everything. But they'll play him in the right position. They'll play him left wing back and say, you don't need to always track back. and you'll see the player that is tearing it up.
He is decent. I did hear some talk that we might be opening or be willing to open the idea of Fresneda again. That's a name that's come up time and time again. But by all accounts, again, I've always seen him as a right back, so I don't really understand the logic there. Do you know that the funniest one that we probably should do, but would never happen, is we should just go and get Cancelo from City just for shits and giggles, and just play him down the left-hand side and say "fuck the world." But
the John Cross report actually linked us with Laporte. That's one of the.
Again, he's
the
a
links.
centre back. I mean, I just don't get.
I don't know what we're doing.
I don't get.
To be honest, nothing would surprise you. Well, I don't get City's obsessions with centre backs either.
No, true. They seem to play like a team of them now, don't they?
It's like there's something in football that we're all not seeing. So there's going to be a big change in a few months.
The new inverted centre back is 4 centre backs across the back, isn't it? Yeah, it's very bizarre. Let's get on to happy news then, because obviously at the time of recording this, we don't know, until the club make a definitive answer on Timber. But I think realistically, we have to face facts. It's going to be. I thought the line in the statement that was telling for me was, "We're all supporting Jurrien at this time," and I was like, "Well, he's not dead." But that to me says that that's a player who knows he's going to be out for a very long time. So it's really unfortunate. But a player that let's hope he's not going to be out for a very long time is Bukayo Saka, Josh. And he seems to be, as you know, I'm the world's biggest England fan. So naturally, I enjoyed his goals for England over the summer. But he is, to me, he's just going up levels again. He's a player that has to start basically every game because that's what Mikel wants. But when he scores goals like that, I don't want to underplay the role that Saliba made in that goal, because I thought his hustling to get that ball back was integral. And also, is it Tross? No, who is it who steps over on the edge of the box? I can't remember who it was now, but someone sort of manipulates the defender out the way to allow Saka to cut inside. But it's just a piece of brilliance, isn't it? Like, as soon as he hit that, to use the cliche, it stayed hit, didn't it? You knew that was in, and he's just so pivotal to everything we do, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can see that in how it appears that we're not seeking cover for that side in a player that I think we'd all think that, well, we haven't got anyone in the squad that can do what he can do. I guess there's not many teams in world football that have 2 players in their squad that can do what one of their top talismanic players can do. And that is a slight worry. We're always going to fear that. The drop off from Saka, I think, is stark. And it's one that, with your negative tinfoil hat on, you'd wonder what Mikel did if there was anything unfortunate that happened to Saka, not to manifest it. But I don't think it's Fabio Vieira's the answer. Perhaps it's just we've got Trossard in, and that's it. It's Trossard and Reece Nelson.
I think it's a change the whole system. I think if Saka gets an injury, you literally have to change that, because I think Smith Rowe probably is an option as well, but not as a wide right player. You literally change the whole system, which is, I mean, it's a risk, isn't it? Like, I
mean, but can I just ask, what is the point of giving Reece Nelson a new contract then?
I didn't want to go there, but I'm with you.
Because I'm pretty sure we're all looking at it saying, we need another one. I think Reece Nelson is the other one.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Vieira and Reece Nelson are probably the cover for the right side. And then you've got Trossard kind of understudy to Martinelli, and then Reece also for that side as well. I think that's the pecking order. Is what I would think.
I've not looked at the squad properly yet to work out who's homegrown and who's not. But I wonder if Nelson fits that role. That we weren't planning on bringing in another English player, and he would take up a squad.
Well, doesn't he? Doesn't Raya tick that box if he comes in?
Yeah. So I think that's possibly what it is.
If you lose Holding, that's one going, isn't it?
Yeah, Holding goes. That's another one going. Yeah.
Well, Tierney's not classed as homegrown, is he? Because he's from Scotland.
I suppose, if you tick it off, I mean, Smith Rowe, Saka. Does Ben White tick it over?
Yeah.
As English, So Ramsdale. I mean, it's definitely one you'd have to fiddle around
It's getting
with a few
close,
bits.
especially for European football,
Saliba
where
would
it's
be
even
classed
larger.
as one, won't he?
Yeah, I think Saliba would as well. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So
It's
so I think we're all overthinking that position, and that's I think the reason why Reece Nelson got given a new contract is, we might sign one more attacker, but I think they play it by the air. They know the three that they wanted is that they've done their business, and then if anything comes up, like Arteta always says, we're always open for business, the Arsene Wenger line. But I just don't see it unless we can get rid of all those players that we need to get rid of, and not just loaning them out. Unfortunately, we kind of need to receive some fees at the moment.
The only thing that worries me about Saka, and I don't know if you think this way, Josh, as well, with regards to him, is he's so good, and he's taken himself to a level where he's not just a really liked guy with a lot of talent. He's almost indispensable. Mikel Arteta does not want to sub him. He's so crucial, not just he's now adding goals to his game, but he's robust, and everything goes down that side. And his relationship with Ben White is so key. And my concern is that, we've seen what's happened with Timber completely out of nowhere. If he got an injury that was, that sidelined him for a long period of time, even if you say Reece Nelson is the backup, going back to my previous point, it's that idea that I feel like we'd have to change the whole system. But then the flip side of that is you look at Saka, and I would put Martinelli in this bracket as well. And those two know they're going to start, don't they? I mean, they're just so good, they have to start. So it comes down to the Ramsdale Raya thing. Do you bring in a player of equal quality to, quote, keep them ready? Because if you're Saka and you know how much Arteta loves you, you know how much Kroenke loves him, and he's going to play every game. So what's the point in having competition for him? Because he knows he's going to play. Unless you sign Ronaldinho at his peak, nobody's going to challenge him, are they?
No, I guess the player you want to get in is someone that's very happy to probably get 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes every game.
A youngster or a player at the end of their career kind of thing.
Or that kind of player that's been doing all right. They're kind of 26, 27. They're at a mid-table side, and it's a step up for them that they never really thought they'd get. Look at Leandro Trossard, for example.
Yeah.
You bring in a hungry player towards his peak that never really thought he'd end up in this position, unless it was a free transfer and potentially gets that. But very happy to be aggressive. We mentioned it, I think, last season. If it was last summer, we'd look at Martinelli and we'd look at Saka and say, there's literally no depth behind them. And right now we've strengthened one flank, and we did that last January. We've not really looked to do it on the other side. But I wonder if between those three, you still maintain a similar amount of firepower. My worry then is what happens with what we're doing up front and what changes there. Because there's definitely, as you mentioned, Ben White's influence with Saka. The other big one is Nketiah.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves drifting out to Saka.
Yeah.
And playing, he's far more comfortable drifting out to that right-hand side. Whereas if you look at what Jesus does, he's very happy at drifting either side. Yeah. And it's where I think Martinelli had that patch in form last season where he just couldn't score because he just wasn't getting the service, because Nketiah would always make the run towards Saka to open the space for him rather than coming over to Martinelli. And then we had Xhaka who just wouldn't play an out ball to him.
Yeah.
That's where I think the change will be. And I wonder if it's then Trossard comes centrally and maybe it's Fabio Vieira out there, or who knows, Zinchenko might be the option. We've got more left-footed players now, that it's not just the obvious one of, it's Fabio Vieira out there.
Yeah. And like you said, Fabio Vieira and Smith Rowe, there's a few options that you could change the system around a little bit to accommodate them. One other question I want to ask, I will ask you both this question, just a short answer on this one. Do either of you have a concern? Fem, I'll start with you. This thing that we do where we sort of get into a position in a game where we're comfortable and then we just cruise a little bit too much in that direction, where we just let it slide. Forest could easily have got a 2-2 out of that. And, you were there, you saw how little intent they had to attack the whole game. They bring on one player with a bit of pace. We absolutely crap ourselves in one attack, and suddenly they're back in the game. you saw how ruthless City were on Friday night, albeit against what I thought was a pretty average Burnley side. But you saw how ruthless they were. 3-0 game done, bosh. That was it. Burnley didn't get a sniff. We've got to be more like that, haven't we? Like, there must be a concern. I could feel it through the TV, the stress in the ground when it was 2-1, because we were crapping ourselves, weren't we?
Yeah, we basically did nothing for the second half. It was so weird. But yeah, it's definitely a concern. I think if you're 3-0 up, I can understand playing like that. And I think Arteta has mentioned that quite a few times last season, where he says, get 3-0 up and then pass, keep the ball. But we were keeping the ball, but we were going nowhere with it, literally nowhere. That's how you get stats like Eddie hasn't touched the ball, because you're not progressing the ball anywhere. It's very slow, and there's just a lack of urgency that then when they scored, we had that urgency back, but we had it in a less controlled way at that point. And then the game became a bit more end to end without them having a lot of chances. It was too end to end. You totally lose control of the game. And we've seen that so many times with this team. Now, one of the things that you then have to question is, this probably goes back to the Timber injury again, which is you only get 3 substitution windows, don't you now? But if you change at half time, that doesn't count within those 3. If you bring out a player at half time and then 1 minute later you have to make a change, it was just basically a waste of a substitute, basically a waste of our free hit. And then you get to the end of the game, you can make one more substitution or one more set of substitution, but because you're 2-1 up, you can't risk bringing on attacking players. But you know that your attacking players are actually quite tired. So, we had a few players that were flagging. Saka was flagging. So it's kind of like that game management thing as well, where Arteta just has to get that right this season, especially with Champions League. We have to be really careful with that. You have to know that, okay, I can only make substitutions in 3 windows. If it's 2-1, what's my plan? Because it's all well and good bringing on Gabriel and, saying you want to be more defensive, but your forward players are actually quite tired. So you have no outlet, basically. Havertz, there was times where he was chasing the ball, and there was times where the ball would go, and you could think, if Havertz did a sprint there, he could actually get it. But he did look quite shattered, to be fair. There was a point where Arteta was saying, come on, like, close down the ball, and the player, the ball went out of play for a throw. He could have actually got it, but that's like the 89th minute or something like that. You could give him a pass, probably, but we have to manage those substitutions properly. That's for me personally.
Yeah. Is that the answer, Josh? Is that the key thing? I know you love a tactical outlook on football. Is that we said it last season, didn't we? That this is the one area of Mikel's management that needs a bit of work. Is that going to be key? The next breakthrough of, like Fem saying, using these subs at the right times and freshening it? Because I just want to see us, when we're in such control of games, I want to see us put our foot on the neck of opponents. And when Man City are going away from home winning 3-0 on the opening day, I just look at that and go, they're already 2 goals ahead of us. And I know that sounds mental after one game, but these are the the limitations you've got to work with. You have to keep pace with them.
Yeah, I guess so. I think we played a more difficult side than Man City did. And
more stubborn. Yeah.
I think I'd also look at it that we saw when we came flying out the traps last season that we could only really sustain that until March before we fell away. And if we're going for another title charge, we've got to be consistent we've got to be consistent across the entire season. And we've got to make sure we're still in form and we're still hitting and churning games towards the end of the season. And that's might come with some, we got lucky with that performances in August, but saving that energy then to then push on towards the end of the season, I think that's what matters. And I think I'd start getting worried about goal difference when it starts to matter. And the 38th game or first game probably doesn't matter. I'd be worried if we were getting, maybe it was 5 or 6 games to go and we've already played Man City twice and then we've got to hope. But to be honest, I think if we're in that case, we're still hoping that City drop points rather than we outscore them. And I think Arteta would pragmatically look at it that way as well. That if it's you've got 12 points left in the last 4 games and we're neck and neck going into it, I think we're still hoping that they're dropping 2 points, they're drawing a game somewhere or losing one, rather than us trying to outscore an opposition and maybe accidentally drop points because we're too open and really throw away the title. And I think that's overall looking at it pragmatically. I agree with Femi generally that I think Arteta could always improve the cadence of his substitutes and when he chooses to do them. I wonder about the Timber one, that knee injuries are so difficult to diagnose. I reckon he's been off for a scan and that was the only way they knew it was his ACL. There's no way you're finding that out in a dressing room with a 15-minute break. You're asking the player, do you feel all right to carry on? And you're having to trust the player judgment at that point. I don't think any physio is being able to go, right, yeah, that's your ACL. It's pretty close to go in because I can feel the ligament right buried inside your knee has got a slight tear or imperfection in it. I don't think any physio could spot that in that high pressure situation as well as for half time.
So then the only other question the question I was going to say with what you were saying is around the tactical stuff. What do you think about the changes that we make? Let me say the upfront. How will players like ESR, Vieira, they had very limited game time last season. If we have close games, how will they ever get a game? Is what I'm thinking. How would they stay fresh? How would you trust them? Is probably more the question, because you should be able to say, okay, although I love Odegaard, although I love Saka, they're at 70%. After 70 minutes, I should be able to trust the other players to bring them in and say, okay, go and do the same thing. Give me the last 20 minutes and give me more energy. It can just come down to that because you're playing, like I said, the Premier League is relentless. The pace that we play at in this league is crazy. You should be able to say, okay, they've done 70 minutes. I know I don't want to change them, but it could be good to freshen it up.
Yeah, I think now that we've got the depth, we've got a larger subs bench now. It's up to 9 and bring 5 players on from that. I think, one of the players we've cited in terms of Odegaard, I think he's actually one of the players that Mikel actually rotates quite well. You always guarantee that about 80 minutes in, Odegaard's probably going to come off in a bit. And I think that's always then an opportunity. But as you mentioned, it's probably one of 3, maybe 4 players that are up for replacing him. And it can't be all of them. And there will need to be a time. I think it's getting closer with Martinelli that he's getting to that 75, 80 minute mark. And then he's coming off and Trossard's coming on. But it's still that concern that we talk about Saka. I wonder if this Forest game where we had to try and break up an opponent, if you then see one of Partey or Rice make way and another attacker comes on, and you still keep some of that stability, or in games where one of them doesn't start, it gives you that opportunity to go, right, Rice, you've played 70 minutes, Partey comes on for 30, and vice versa. You get the rotation that way. But
I don't see Rice. I don't see Rice ever. I think Rice is... I think we're trying to fit Partey in at the moment. I think we're trying to fit Partey in by all means necessary. I think Gabriel didn't start because we wanted to fit Partey in, for example. I think he's the one. I see, getting rid of a defender basically because you're basically starting the game as if you're playing the 75th minute and you're 0-0 basically. That's the way we started the game. And then we finished the game as if we were 0-0 trying to, so it was a bit, it's interesting, it's something different. Arteta did say he wanted to be less predictable, and I guess the way we started was very unpredictable, I guess.
Yeah, and I can see that's why Gabriel was left out for tactical reasons, because if you look at all the players that were ahead of him, they've all got far quicker recovery speed for when the ball's going backwards. And if we were playing Gabriel higher up, where one of probably Timber might have been playing, or Rice or Partey, all three of them are quicker at getting back. Timber probably not now after he's done his knee, but generally they're all going to recover when that quick counter comes. And we saw that from Rice, especially with his recovery pace, being able to get back and sweep up. So I do wonder how we're going to mix it up across the season. And if we do see a return to that formation that we kind of knew from last season, where you had that kind of Xhaka role, Odegaard, the kind of 2/8s, and how Thomas Partey or Declan Rice fit into that system. Because I know it's one that we were scratching our head about all summer, and it looks like the way that Arteta's approached it is by going, curveball, I'm going to mix up the formation and I'm going to play both of them alongside three centre-backs.
Yeah, it is interesting. I find it fascinating how we're going to sort of shape up, and I appreciate it is going to, it's probably going to be a fluid model, and I think if Timber's injury is confirmed to be as bad as we suspect, or it seems to be, it'll be interesting to see if that changes the club's thought process on whether they do need to continue to be in this window or not. Purely just on a numbers basis. I just wonder if it forces our hand, because he was obviously going to be very pivotal to being a first team player this season. And I do just wonder how the substitutes are going to be used as well in that regard, because we cannot afford another big injury, that's for sure. That aside, we got the win, so obviously that's a good thing. And a win is a win at the end of the day. That's all you can ask for. But I just want to touch on one other thing off the field. And this is Pete Coulson's question, actually ties into this. I want to come to you on this one, Fem, because obviously you were there. Two sides of one incident on Saturday and then an incident that's come off the back of that has been, discussion. The ticket situation pre-game. So we all know that you have an usher and a red carpet, and they, ask you, they open a door. It's like got a big, massive sort of. It's like is it like a ring of roses where they just sort of say, "Please come in, sir." I don't know how it works, but you're a VIP, as everyone knows. But jokes aside, did you get in on time? I think you said you were in the ground before, didn't you? Or
no, I was stuck outside.
Oh, you were stuck outside, and it rained as well.
You know what? Luckily, I'll say this: the queue that I was in was ridiculous. I'll say that for sure. I was outside for 45 minutes or an hour. But luckily, where I come in, my gate is right there, basically, as soon as you walk in. Some of the guys that come in, basically, from the other end. So when you get off at Arsenal Station, basically, to come to our entrance, you have to walk past the North Bank, past all the statues, the Ken Fryer Bridge. Basically, that place was so packed that so all the pictures that you saw was where it was packed, basically, and people couldn't walk even through, basically. So people coming from both directions, because there was so many people at the turnstiles, the other people couldn't walk past. So it was an absolute mess, and someone's going to get in big trouble about that. I'll be honest with you. Let's be honest. I think the people that designed the tech, come to find out now that apparently the Premier League are insisting on the tech. So it's not an Arsenal thing. Apparently it's a Premier League thing where and all the clubs are kind of going to have to roll it out eventually, where they want to go paperless tickets and digital tickets, basically. But the system went down, basically, is what happened. And they had to reboot the system a couple of times. So obviously, if the system's down and you're asking everyone to bring digital tickets, it ends up that, well, no one can enter the stadium. And when there's 30,000 people outside, it's an absolute mess. It was carnage, that I'm not going to lie to you. And then it started raining, which didn't really help matters as well. Someone's going to, they've got, to be fair, I heard Liverpool had the same issue when they introduced the system, but they had it in pre-season, I think.
Yeah, but that was because they nicked the technology. That's why that didn't work.
This is probably where we did miss out on having the Emirates Cup, maybe. this season,
Yeah.
like a proper, the 2-day Emirates Cup where they could have trialed it, because there was no other way of trialing the system.
Did they trial it with the Monaco
Apart from
game? Do you
just-
know? Did they?
They did trial it with the Monaco game, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing the Monaco game would have been different because it's a 12:30 kickoff. You'll basically just get a rush of people just coming in around 11:30 to 12, basically 12:15 is usually what people do. They would have gone to the pub, whereas a Monaco game is a friendly. People will just be wandering casually to the stadium.
Yeah.
And it's an evening kickoff. People would have staggered their times of coming in, whereas everyone came in at the same time, and it was a absolute carnage, But like I said, they've just got to get it right for the next game, and they're lucky it was Nottingham Forest. Imagine it was like a Tottenham or a Man United. Man United's coming up soon at home. You just got to. But with technology, I guess you can never know. But I know Arsenal do pride themselves on getting all these things absolutely perfect, and we got emails even before I'd got home. I got email apologizing and saying they'll fully investigate it, all of that type of stuff.
It's funny, actually, when I came up for a game with Jace last year, honestly, Jace gives me fucking kittens because he likes to go to the pub before and catch up with everybody. And I'm like the tourist. If I go to games on my own, I'm in the ground like an hour before kickoff, just reading the program, or whatever, because I get that anxiety of not being in on time. So I always like to be in and settled. So
yeah, I'm the worst. I turn up 5 minutes before nowadays. I need to stop doing that.
If you're that guy, I'll ask both of you on this one because we have got the time to cover this as a question. I saw a tweet on my timeline yesterday that I'll be honest, it did trigger me a little bit, and for different reasons. Now, before I sort of go into this, I will preface this by saying, on average, I get if you average it out, 2 games max a season, right? Maybe 1 away, maybe 1 home, because I live in the arse end of nowhere, and it, let's be real, it's very expensive to not only get up to London but also go to games, etc. So I appreciate I'm in the minority here of the fact I don't go to games every week, but the tweet essentially was alluding to the fact that the mostly young gentlemen and ladies of the Ashburton Army, who we all know created a lot of atmosphere last season, did a lot of very good things for the club. I'm not disputing that at all. But I got a little bit triggered by Pete's questions on the screen now, where he's saying, can we track down the name, the bean counter, who cut Ashburton Army's tickets by half? Maybe I'm in the minority. I have a suspicion Josh might be on the same boat as me with this one, possibly, but we'll find out. But my argument is no, that's not how this should be. Purely because I feel that everyone has the right to support their club however they see fit. And I think this argument that if you don't come in beating your chest, or have a drum or shouting abuse at the opposition fans, or, just being vocal all game long, suddenly you're a bad fan. I know we've had long running issues with some supporters that have issue with foreign fans and tourists. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that there should be a fine split between what you call your local everyday hardcore and, people who can only come over for a game once a year or might be on holiday, etc. If I go to Mallorca on holiday, I want to be able to go and watch a Mallorca game and not be judged for it. And I think it should be the same at Arsenal. But personally, I have this issue with this sense of entitlement behind that. Oh, you've had a good season, you banged the drum a bit, you've all got the same t-shirts, you've made a bit of noise. That to me doesn't constitute that you should just automatically have your allocation. Where do you stand on this, Josh, first of all? Because I know you're much the same as me. You might not get to too many games Arsenal wise in a season. Do you feel like it should be fair for all, regardless of whether you want to take an iPad or not, even though I'm not a big fan of that personally?
I guess it depends on how we define fair. And say, I'm not sure how big their allocation was it maybe 200 and they've cut it down to 100 tickets or so. I guess it's where those other 100 have gone. They've not just removed those seats from the ground and gone, well, yeah, that's now we've got we've got a smaller capacity. That's not what's happened. Other supporters are in that block now. I guess it's probably what's more of the issue is establishing that singing section. So is if there's people around the stadium who want to join in that atmosphere. The Ashburton Army weren't the only 200 people in the ground singing. I think, as you say, Kris, they weren't the only ones banging their drums and shouting. I think it's establishing that area within the ground to ensure that you've got that consistency, and it doesn't matter who's in there at all. It could be another supporters group. I think what happens is they've got excellent PR and excellent way of showing that they were the ones that helped generate the noise, but no one's mentioning that. That maybe Black Scarf Group, or I don't think AST might have some allocation of tickets to them, but they're not all in the same uniform, so they're a lot harder to spot. They're all in Arsenal tickets. Yeah, there's going to be. I know there's a supporters club in Lancashire that has a handful of tickets available in a season ticket pool. There's plenty of other supporters groups that I'm sure are singing, and maybe we'll diversify it. But I think the main thing about the atmosphere and resolving that is ensuring that those who want to make noise are close enough to each other that it then becomes infectious around the ground. And that was it. And they were infectious.
Yeah.
It's also, as Femi's probably mentioned, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the stadium were probably pissed off that it took them 45 minutes to get into the ground. Probably weren't really up for being quite happy and jovial and shouting about how great Arsenal are, when Arsenal right now they've seen as being as a problem of how they got in the ground. Yeah, some of the people were sobering up outside. How dare they?
Yeah,
I think
and the other thing
to be sorry, go on.
No, just really quickly, and I want to come to you on this, Fem, but I got a tweet from a Palace fan, and I thought it was quite, because this chap doesn't follow me and vice versa. He just literally picked up my tweet and he tweeted me back and said it'd be great if Palace fans understood this. And I think of all the grounds that we know, Palace is a great example where they do have that quote unquote ultra section, the live drums, etc., the tifos and whatever. And although they are a significantly smaller ground, etc. I just thought that was a really good example of a club that you can compare to. And like I said, this is not me knocking the individuals of Ashburton Army. I think what they did was great, absolutely, and it did help the atmosphere. My issue is people dictating to me as an individual, or the people that have every right to sit in that seat. Well, if you don't sing, or if you don't do what we do, you don't dress how we do, etc., then you shouldn't have the ticket because you're not a proper supporter. Personally, I'm not really a singer. For me, it's a bit cringe. It's just not my cup of tea. That doesn't mean I sit on my hands and go, oh, jolly good goal, old chum, that was fantastic. I'm not a prawn sandwich. I'm not like you, Them. I don't have my own ground to watch games in. But for me personally, I'm just more of a visceral, shout when something happens thing. But I'm not really a singer, and I don't feel the need. I'm 40 years of age. I don't need to be associated with a group to feel like a fan. I've supported this club over 25 years of my life. So where do you sit on it? Because obviously, again, you were in the ground, you experienced the pre-match and post-match.
I think not. To be fair to them, I think they do generate an atmosphere when it's quiet in the ground, because Arsenal does have a. So to be fair to them, you do notice the noise. That it's constant 90 minutes. They do a good job of that. So that's me being, and the atmosphere last season was just incredible, and we definitely somehow, some way do not want to lose that. I don't know what it is, but we don't want to lose that. I'm not saying that they generated the atmosphere totally. Obviously, the team winning generated the atmosphere, and I think if we were continued playing sizzling football throughout that game as well, you would have seen, lots of the noise. Exactly, the noise would have continued. But let's say, let's say, to be fair, a lot of people have gripes with the new ticketing system. I just don't know how Arsenal can work it to get it fair. The balance system, it works and it doesn't work. For example, I can see why people who have been going for 15, 20 years on silver would have a gripe, because I opened 2 junior gunners accounts last week for the children, and I could put in for the ballot within an hour of me opening that. How do we know people are not opening 10 red memberships Arsenal don't care because they're getting the £30 or whatever it is for the memberships, and then people can just put in for as many ballots as they want. So who draws it? We don't know where it comes from. So I can see it becoming a problem if the home form isn't good. Let's put it like that. It's going to get the noise will get, and you watch it. If the noise will get louder, let's hope it doesn't come to that, and let's hope we just continue. Continue getting better and better. But it's just something to keep an eye on. But if the team is the fans basically. The team, when you see Odegaard waving his hands like that, those are the things that get the crowd going. Like you said, I'm not really a singer. Like if there's a song around me, I'll sing a song. So let's see how it goes. To be honest, one thing I do know is, from what I've been hearing, it's not all the way stopped touts, but it has stopped a lot of the touts.
Which is a good thing.
That was going around. Yeah, but you can still see tickets online for like £1,000.
Crazy money.
I don't know how they would ever stop that. And I do think there's still people using bots to buy tickets, because I needed one single ticket last week, just one. Every time one ticket came online, within 2 seconds it was gone. So there's clearly some people that know how to manipulate the system.
Yeah, and as I say, like I said, I thought it would be an interesting topic to debate, and I'm not sitting here saying that certain people shouldn't get tickets. And if you've been going every year of your life or whatever, and then someone suddenly says, "Oh, actually, you've got to go into a pot for that, my friend," it sucks. I get that absolutely 100%. I just have an issue with, I guess, that sense of entitlement, and how do we know if some fans won't make similar noise if they're never able to get to games, which I guess is the other argument. And God forbid that we have another season where things go to shit. But there's also that other argument of the same supporters that are vocal for the good could also be very vocal to the bad. So I suppose there's a balancing act there. But yeah, like I say, it's provoked some good interaction in the chat. So thank you all for keeping it fair, and appreciate that, because I do appreciate it does divide people. Now, Arsenal, if you could arrange my transport up every week and pay for my tickets, that'd be great. Thank you. We are just going to start to bring the show to a close with our new timescales, etc. But we have got a couple of questions just to rattle through very quickly. Pete also highlighted this rumor that is going around about Gabriel. Do either of you want to go at this? I'll just throw it to the floor. Do we think there's anything in this? I mean, it seems a bit of an odd one. There's the tweet that Danny's just kindly put up on the screen from John Cross, the Virgin, John Cross, suggesting that he's. I mean, being targeted is one thing. Us being open to selling him, I think, is very different. But yeah, what do you reckon, Fem?
I was about to say that I would think John Cross probably got wind of, maybe a contact in Saudi that's told him, oh yeah, they're looking at Gabriel, but to sell Gabriel, I mean, he just signed a new contract. I mean, if they're going to come in with 80, 90 million, fair enough. But what's the actual point? Unless the article says Arsenal like Laporte. I can't see Man City selling us Laporte for some reason. And do you even want Laporte, considering his injury record? I mean, Gabriel started 73 games in a row before Saturday. Do you want, Laporte's been out injured so many times.
And he can't get in the City side. So do we really want to sign their cast-offs again?
Well, I think we're all right. I don't think that will happen. It's probably just, like you said, interest. Interest is one thing. Delivering on that interest is exactly.
I think it's just it's a year coming into when he last signed his deal. Maybe
makes
it's
sense.
a good opportunity just to slide it in and go, hey, put some people on some bigger contracts now, and we still know that Big Gabby is very important to us. And I'm imagining the Champions League money may have done that, and anything that can go out there.
New deal as well, isn't it? Yeah, agree.
There's lots of deals in there where he thinks, or his agent goes, oh, I reckon I could squeeze another couple of, maybe $1 million or so out of that wage budget. We've seen that we are going to be moving players on. There will be space, I imagine, in that wage bill for Gabriel to sign another new contract, and I guess he's still happy to be at the club.
player seems happy, and I still think that there was a slight injury doubt. I still think that's why he didn't play Saturday. I don't buy the tactical thing personally. I just there was rumours that he had an injury in training on Friday, and that's why they didn't risk him, and that's what I choose to believe. I could be wrong. And I can confirm, by the way, John Cross does indeed have wind. And the other one I wanted to just pull out of the pot as well. Actually, we'll do these two because we've got time. Billy wanted to ask to the panel, what is a striker that you think Arsenal should pursue next summer? I don't know about you two, but assuming he can keep his betting slips to himself, Ivan Toney is a good fit for me. If the stars align, I feel like he's a very good fit myself. You're not convinced,
I don't know.
are you, Josh?
No, and I'm waiting to see which Brighton forward Femi's going to mention of who would go after. Which one is it going to be? Is it going to be Evan? Is it Evan or is it going to be João Pedro?
I think it's going to be Evan, isn't it?
Yeah,
he seems to
could be Evan.
Yeah.
He looks like. I think it depends on how he pursues this season. Next summer, what you're buying is you're still buying potential and a raw talent.
Yeah.
If he can get into the role that De Zerbi wants him to, where he is a 9 and a 10, then you've got a hell of a player on your hands.
Yeah, true. Multifunctional.
But that's where I then look at João Pedro. And I mean, I've only seen a little bit of him, but already he looks like the next one.
Striker in the same mold as what we've got already.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're looking then to upgrade on Nketiah, which would be an upgrade on Nketiah. And he's so far not as injury prone as Gabriel Jesus. And I guess the question also is what's happening with Balogun?
We'll come on to that question in a second. Yeah. I mean, you could just go and get Aubameyang back, or Alexis Sanchez is on a free transfer at the moment.
Yeah. You know what? Victor Osimhen. This is scary. Actually, he signed a new contract, didn't he? And he's got a release clause in it.
But it's quite high.
That's the big catch.
Yeah,
150 million euros, which in about 120, 130. I mean, I don't want to see him at Chelsea next season, and I could see something like that happening. Where he goes to Chelsea or United, someone that needs a striker, and why would we could go for him? Why not? If we have another good season. If you're saying your team is pretty much set and you just want one signing per season, mate, he's coming to the Premier League next season. For him to put that release clause in and it's active in 2024, that's a player. But if not, let's go back to. I don't really like going back to Brighton because personally I don't like what they've done this summer. Is crazy for me.
You're not a fan of. Owners taking the piss out of the rest of the top six. Is that what you're not a fan of?
Only Bloom is having a lovely time.
Can't believe it.
I mean, what I would say is that they did sell one player below market value.
Yeah, but didn't have
when he wasn't being a dickhead. Yeah, because they said, all right, actually, you've been a long servant. Don't leave us during the World Cup. You're going to go and have a massive one. Yeah, in order for you to stay and get us European football, we'll put in a smaller release clause for certain teams. And again,
I just like De Zerbi's ruthlessness, though. Like that quote you put in the group today, and he's just like, I don't speak about players who are no longer with us. Basically, he's dead to me, and I'm just like, that's brilliant.
He was like, we've forgotten Caicedo. That was his pre-match press conference before Luton.
And that's how it should be, And I call it now. I said all along I didn't like the cut of Caicedo's jib, and the fact that he's chosen Chelsea just tells me everything I need to know about a kid. So I wish him nothing but injuries and hell. And Boy10, by the way, has just asked quickly on Jonathan David. He didn't have the best start to the season. He missed three, at least two, arguably three pretty good chances against Nice at the weekend. So Jonathan David, whichever I think he is a player who probably will end up in the Premier League at some point, but it will probably be more of a if I had to put my head on the block, an Everton, a Villa, I feel like that's where he's going to end up. I don't think he's going to get
another cheeky one I'd put out there. Isak,
who I love, and I still think we missed that opportunity.
How?
Yeah, Newcastle ain't selling him.
Newcastle are now, never going to sell players.
We have
That's
the
the thing.
chance.
You've
We
got
have
to
the
try and
chance.
get a player who just he's got to upset the boat. It's the same as that you saw at Man City when players want to leave. They'll do everything to leave. And if you've got a manager as ruthless as Pep, then he'll go, yeah, see you later. And I know we can say, oh, the Saudis can, afford, Newcastle could afford to have a player just sitting in the reserves. Well, I'm not so sure on that one.
He's a weird one though, Isak, because he would honestly fit us now perfectly. Because he's not just a big, tall front man. He's quick. He's technically brilliant. He holds the ball up well. He links the play. He's young. He's athletic. I really feel like that was one we probably could have got done and probably should have got done. But yeah, it is what it is. Let's finish on Balogun because Avon's asked, are Monaco serious about Balogun? I feel like I'm well positioned to take this one. The short answer is yes, they are. The problem is, have they got the money? Inter Milan have just signed Marko Arnautovic. Yes, that one. They're going full banter once again. It's good to see the old Inter are back. I think what that tells me is that Inter have not got huge amounts of money. However, what it also tells me is that they are looking at, they brought in Arnautovic as almost like what Real Madrid did with Joselu. They've brought in a stopgap before they go for the big fish, i.e. obviously Real Madrid want Mbappe. I'm not convinced that Inter are willing to pay what we are trying to sell Balogun for. And let's just once again repeat, Balogun is not going to leave Arsenal for 50 million quid. Anyone that thinks that is a moron. He's going to go for about 30 to 35 million pounds, so about 40 million euros max. And it's whether I think it might end up almost being a Rice type deal with Balogun, where we sort of accept 25 million up front and then a series of add-ons. The two names that I would probably keep an eye on over Monaco and Inter would be West Ham and Crystal Palace, because they've both got vacancies, shall we say. Balogun would start every week for both those clubs. Palace aren't as skint as people think they are, and Balogun under Roy Hodgson would be an interesting vibe. But I think West Ham
as was he under David Moyes. I feel sorry for his career if he ends up at either of those two sides.
Yeah, and I agree with what Boy's saying there. It's a weak fee, but it's what he's worth, mate. It's what he's worth. And as much as I love my French football, Liga is not a league that, however much I like it and I enjoy it and I think it's a talented league, no one looks at Liga and says, oh, well, he scored 40 goals in Liga. Unless you're Mbappe, nobody's going to rate strikers. It's the reason why Eli Wahi is going to go for sort of 20 million. It's the reason that David is available for sort of 20 to 30. Players are not going to sign from France for big money. They're just not. So, yes, he got a lot of goals in Liga, but he played in a Rams team that was set up for him to score those goals and a team that was literally created for him. At Arsenal, that's not the case. And I don't think he's got an attitude. I think I'm sure he's fine with Arsenal, but I think in his mind, he'd already made his mind up before he came back that he wanted to move on. So although that fee seems weak, you've got to remember what we paid for him when we first took him. It's a massive, massive profit. And, we, as Femi said earlier on, we need to sell. So, yeah, Monaco's a good fit, by the way, particularly if their star striker ends up in jail. So, less said the better. Wow. Right. Just before we leave then, final thoughts, Josh, ahead of Crystal Palace, which I believe is our next fixture on Monday this time next week, isn't it? Are you confident that we can go to the Ultras of Palace and cut them down?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the game where we give Roy Hodgson a heart attack and that finishes him off for the season.
Oh, poor bastard. He nearly had one on Saturday, didn't he? Bless him.
I think so. He's going out and fighting people. He doesn't care. He's just sick.
Swinging arms.
But
Femi, are you gonna make the trip across London for that one?
No, not for that one.
I think do away games.
Fem doesn't do south of the river.
No. Without a horse-drawn carriage.
What I would say is this weekend is interesting because Manchester United are playing Tottenham.
Yeah.
And Newcastle are playing Man City. Mm-hmm. But I think we've got a really tough game.
I do
Man
too.
United should be about 4-0 down, by the way. I'm
Really?
looking at this in the corner of my eye.
Yeah, Wolves
it
are
still-
absolutely smashing it. Have you seen that
Is it
run?
still
Was it,
0-0?
have you seen that run of
Yeah,
was it
but it
Cunha's
should
in
be
the first
4-0
half
down.
where just
Yeah.
Martinez bounces off him like he's a toddler?
Yes, absolutely
It's 'cause
crazy.
Martinez is shit.
I'm worried about that Palace game.
Me too.
It
won't be the same as last year, will it?
Yeah, and it's a tough place that we always do struggle. And we last year was Zinchenko and the Jesus show, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
So
good point.
let's see if we can get Zinny back. And up front, we need the ball to stick. We need it to stick away from home. Our away form was so good last season. And man, we miss Gabriel Jesus so much. It's like he doesn't exist. But yeah, let's hope. A tie, any sort of win would be great. But I can see a draw, unfortunately. But I'm naturally pessimistic anyway.
What might help us is that one of their best players is linked with a move away, and that might still go through in the next week in Anderson.
Olise. Oh, Anderson. Okay, yeah.
At least he's injured, isn't he?
Oh yeah, of course he is. Yeah. I think Chelsea is still keen because they just don't care. Do they? Sign everyone like 1 leg, 3 legs, no legs. We don't care. Sign him up. Yeah. I'm confident, but much like you, Fem, I always sit in the pessimistic box. So yeah, I do think it'll be a tough game. But again, realistically, if we want to be in the title race, we have to go and try and win. So let's hope for that. But we will be back, as I said, after that game on the Tuesday, not on the Monday. So schedules aside, we should be back for the Tuesday. Usual lineup this season. There may be a few people, like some weeks we might have 2 people on, some weeks we might have 4 people on. Danny is here, as you can tell by the wonderful graphics that are being displayed on the screen as we speak. He's just sitting in the background because he's naked. And nobody needs to see that under any circumstances. But yeah, Danny will be here pressing the buttons and contributing as the season goes on. Just a reminder, like I say, we have trialed Facebook tonight. So those of you who have been watching us on Facebook, good evening to Sharon, to Dawn, to Petra, to Mick, to Stephen, and all the other 50 pluses on Facebook. I'm joking, but thank you for joining us. And of course, if you do like the show, do please give us a like, give us a subscribe, flick the bell, share it with your friends. I don't have friends, so I mean, would you hang out with somebody who looks like this? I wouldn't. But if you do have friends, do share our show with them. Lots of things coming up soon. We'll be having an interview with Charles Watts soon with his new book that's upcoming, so look out for that. I'm in the process of trying to sort out a couple of interviews specials as well. And we will be doing a cribs with Femi soon, so look out for that when he shows us his 4 swimming pools. But that is it for tonight. So Fem, thank you for being a part of the first show of the new season. Thank you for coming on, mate.
That's all
Good stuff. And Josh, thank you very much for coming on as well. You can now go and polish your bike.
That's all right. I had to be here.
Well, technically, yeah. I mean, if you two aren't here, I ain't going to talk to myself. Right. Many thanks to the chat. Thanks to my guests, Fem and Josh, to Danny in the background. If you do like us, stick with us because we're in for a long old season. Could be good. Sometimes maybe good. Sometimes maybe shit, as somebody famously once said. Whatever happens, we'll be here for it. So thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate your time. And we'll see you next week. Up the Arsenal. Good night.
As soon as I scored that goal,
Danny beat me to it. And then
as soon as I scored that goal, I was fucking livid. Get down, dog. Splendid business.
He nearly caught the bloody thing. What are you talking about?
So I've just eaten a full quiche. Well, you don't often see them at Iggs. So when you see them in the supermarket, they need to be swagged, microwaved immediately, and get the brown sauce on one. Bosh, Bob's your uncle.
Never in doubt.